on the Quran.
The problem, Eric, is right now the moderate Muslims aren't in charge. The radical Muslims are in charge. Too many mosques in America are preaching jihad. We did a study, and 80 out of 100 randomly selected mosques were preaching jihad. There was a preacher, an imam in Boston, who was preaching in the way of Allah, and I'm quoting, pick up the gun, pick up the sword, and fight. Now, there was a guy who went to his mosque who picked up a knife and attacked the police there, and they shot him dead. That's the problem right there, is we need a way to do that. And as Aaron said, incitement is not free speech. When you tell someone to pick up the gun and pick up the sword and fight, that is not religiously protected speech. That is a crime. We should prosecute that, and we know where those things are.
In the unresolved problem segment tonight, homegrown terrorism. In the wake of the San Bernardino attack, the issue is on the forefront of the presidential campaign.
We have multiple threats. One is the people entering the country through the refugee program. That is a growing threat. But I think the most immediate threat in front of us is the homegrown violent extremist.
Adding to those concerns, new developments indicating that a stabbing attack at the University of California, Merced, last month may have been motivated by Islamic extremism. Joining us now from Los Angeles, counterterrorism specialist Aaron Cohen, and from Washington, Jim Hansen from the Center for Security Policy. I'm going to start with you, Aaron. Let's talk about this a little bit. Homegrown terrorism. How do you stop it?
Well, I'm calling this osmosis, or ISIS osmosis, and essentially this diffusion of incitement needs to be blocked by a couple different things. One, I think we have to create international enforceable laws to classify incitement as an actual weapon. Once there's an international definition of that, then you can put some teeth into it, and then therefore anybody who propagates or uses incitement in social media or via the internet, we can then begin to shut down those propagandists. And then two,
that is a moving target, my friend, because you're talking about First Amendment rights, free speech. We protect ugly, hateful speech in America.
I agree, but at the same time, we need to affect some type of balance and between that free speech and what incited propaganda could mean in terms of potential violence. So we have to. How do we? It's creating enough layers to be able to say, okay, if somebody's going to say this or post this that could lead to potential threats, then that assessment needs to be defined very diligently. Otherwise, again, we're just going to fail.
Jim, it strikes me that the way to really do this, the way to solve this homegrown terror problem before it gets any bigger than it already is to get moderate Muslims on board. Now, the question is, what's a moderate Muslim? Does a moderate Muslim ascribe to Sharia law, to the Quran? The Quran says the infidel can be punished to the extent of death. Do we get moderate Muslims to push back on the Quran?
The problem, Eric, is right now the moderate Muslims aren't in charge. The radical Muslims are in charge. Too many mosques in America are preaching jihad. We did a study, and 80 out of 100 randomly selected mosques were preaching jihad. There was a preacher, an imam in Boston, who was preaching in the way of Allah, and I'm quoting, pick up the gun, pick up the sword, and fight. Now, there was a guy who went to his mosque who picked up a knife and attacked the police there, and they shot him dead. That's the problem right there, is we need a way to do that. And as Aaron said, incitement is not free speech. When you tell someone to pick up the gun and pick up the sword and fight, that is not religiously protected speech. That is a crime. We should prosecute that, and we know where those things are happening. We just need to look closer, and Obama doesn't want to do
I'm not sure. On the surface, logic would say, yes, you're right, but I'm not sure the crime occurs until the crime actually occurs, until there's violence or something happens.
I would disagree. Now, we can have the lawyers check on that. I think if you have people preaching that you should kill the infidels, and they're doing it in mosques in the United States, that's a problem that we have a right to look at. And I think you're right. We should be asking the moderate Muslims, if you're in a mosque and you hear that, see something, say something, tell somebody.
Yeah, Aaron, why is it that the moderate Muslim community isn't speaking up louder?
No, the reason why is because they're afraid to talk back against Islam. They don't want to insult or shame what a lot of people believe is an unchangeable religion when it comes to how you preach. And Hanson nailed it. The fact is if we don't begin, Eric, to frame the incitement in a way that we're looking at it from total threat assessment, you're going to have more people get killed. So I get the free speech thing, but like Jim said, if we don't start framing the incitement part as a weapon of war being used by terror, then we're allowing ourselves to fall into this politically correct hole, which will result in millions more dead.
Very quickly, I only have about 20 seconds, 10 seconds each guy. First you, Aaron. Is it going to get better, or how much worse is it going to get if things stay the same? We got a year left in President Obama's term. Quickly.
Well, it has to get worse, and the reason why is because it always has to hit the bottom before it comes out. Right now, America is a 14-year-old puberty going through security puberty is what I call it. It will get better, but until it hits the bottom and more people get killed, it's not going to improve.
Was a tough year. Quickly, Jim, your thoughts?
It will absolutely get worse. There are not only homegrown extremists going crazy right now, ISIS has infiltrated people, there are others, and we're doing nothing to stop it. That's Obama's policy.
Yeah, I'll leave it there, gentlemen.
Of Islam.
Thank you very much. Very enlightening. Directly ahead for the first time.